Today, we're trying that new technique I've been teasing you with for 2 weeks now, so stick around. Hello, colorists. Welcome to PencilStash, a weekly show all about coloring. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to get all the new content, and be sure to hit that like button if you're enjoying my videos. Today, we're finishing up this Christmas double spread page from Romantic Country's Second Tale by Erie, as well as trying out a new medium to see if it would make for a new addition to our coloring toolbox. So let's get right into it. Starting with warm gray 10%, we're going to begin what you've heard me refer to as the bad camouflage stage, which means we're just going to go around the surface of our door and put down each color randomly, or where we think the most wear and tear would be, or where we think our lights and our shadows would be. So if you want to make sure to use only medium to light pressure here, don't press too hard. Make sure that you're feathering the colors right up against one another, because later we'll be blending them all together and you don't want any harsh transitions where there shouldn't be one. So just place down each of the colors, building around them until the whole surface is covered. Now, just a bit of backstory. I really struggled with what palette to do this door in, and my initial thought was to keep the overall tone of this page warm and bright, very holiday, but the more I went through the options, I decided that I would do something kind of opposite of that so that the Christmas decorations really stood out against that more muted tone, which ultimately ended up being pale blue. Does anyone else struggle with these color decisions like I do? Sometimes I have to force myself to walk away from a piece to keep me from overthinking it. Because then by the time I come back, sometimes days later, I have the answer that I need and I'm more confident in my choices. It's really hard to kind of jump in and make those decisions using colored pencils kind of rashly, because you can't erase that easily. You can't cover over it with a different color later on. So it's really good to take your time and think about these choices. Like I said, take that time if you need to, and then come back when you're ready. With the slate gray, this is going to be the last color in the bad camo phase. So any white spaces left, make sure they all get covered with this color before we move on. Or if at this point you don't like the way that your color ratios are turning out, just feel free to go back in with whatever previous colors or any new colors that you like to use. Just by the end, make sure that all of that blank white space is gone. All right, now the surface of this door doesn't look very flat, doesn't look sanded. It looks rough. So we're going to take our warm gray 50% and take full advantage of that. We're going to place this down where these long vertical lines are, all along kind of the outer edges or the perimeter of the door itself. Don't worry about getting too deep into the areas of shadow behind the wreath, as we'll be going back in a moment with a darker color to capture those areas. But first, we'll use our blender over the entire surface of the door. Back to those shadows, those deep shadows. We're going to use warm gray 90%. And for this, I'd like to make sure that the tip of my pencil is nice and sharp. I'm going to go back into all these little nooks and crannies behind the wreath. I'm going to choose a light source, put in some shadow outlines all around the light areas just to give this thing a bit more weight, a bit more depth. Let's go in now and do the facade of this house or this building in the background here. And I also love these relief shapes up at the top. This is a great opportunity to add a little bit of color. You can also treat these like stained glass if you wanted to, but I chose to incorporate them more into the building material itself, whichever floats your boat. And I have to say that when I first decided to do this page, I saw the great Christmas wreath and the greenery around the door, the nutcrackers, the reindeer, all good stuff, right? What I didn't see was the background, which is really tedious because when you finally look at it more closely and plan how to color it, suddenly it seems like a lot of work. So, since both sides of our building on this double spread page are identical, I'm going to use the same colors and techniques for all of it. We're going to go through just kind of a basic tutorial for this part, and then we'll do a big reveal when it's done. I really doubt that you want to listen to me for hours and hours as I go through every part of the structure, saying pretty much the same thing over and over again. So, what I'm going to explain here, you can really kind of apply over and over again as you tackle each separate part of the building. Okay, so see the areas I've already colored where the arrow's pointing? This is what each section of the final product will look like. So let's recreate that in this section up here. And the whole facade really only has 3 colors, with the exception of the blues that I just used in those upper reliefs. So first you're going to take your warm gray, 10%, the lightest color in our trio, and you'll just fill in the majority of whatever section you're working on. Except for about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch around the perimeter, you're going to leave blank. See how I'm kind of leaving that open space at the edges of each section? Just going to fill in kind of the middle here. Now I'll go in with my warm gray 20%, which is the middle tone of our trio, the mid-tone, and I'll fill in those spaces that I left white using kind of a circular or an orbital motion to feather nicely into the areas with that 10% gray. Now, warm gray 70%, the darkest of our trio. This color is reserved for the very, very edges. So you'll want to create a thin line right over top of the areas that you just colored with that mid-tone, right up against whatever shaped edge you're coloring. This is the area of the shadow. This is what's going to make it look three-dimensional. And remember too, you'll want to take extra care to feather this in nicely into the adjacent colors to make it look like a natural, nice transition. Don't forget the interior areas of your reliefs too. Now you're going to do the same exact thing on the rest of the page's facade. And I like to take each little section on its own, doing all 3 colors right in succession so that I can focus and get each section right before moving on to the next section. I also just went around each line of those reliefs with warm gray 70% in order to make them pop just a bit. They were kind of getting lost. Once the facade was done, I tackled the curtains in the same blues I used on the door and on the reliefs. Also did the front stairs, and the pots our Christmas trees went in, using the same lovely gold palette we used earlier on the ornaments. Then I thought that this floor area looked super bare, and I didn't want to color it just one color or a shapeless variety of colors. I wanted some pattern. And this is a very grand house indeed. So I thought the pavers would be just beautiful here. And I used nearly the same technique that I showed you guys a few months ago about using your colored pencils to create brick. And if you missed that one, I'll put a link to it down in the descriptions. But just a quick recap, use a ruler and a pencil to create your rough shapes just with a very light outline. Then you bad camo with a few colors. Then I used espresso to outline my brick shapes, making sure that my edges were rounded off to make them look more natural. Then I put in my shadows and finally went over the whole area with my blender pencil. And here's what we ended up with. Is it finished? Well, it certainly could be. You could absolutely leave it like this and be very happy with the finished result. But I was walking around Target a few weeks ago, and you know what I found? Glitter! Now, I don't know if this is a good idea, trying to incorporate glitter into our coloring, or if I'm just being led around by my inner 6-year-old who loves glitter. Now, this may end up looking beautiful and it may end up being a disaster. We are going to find out together. So, for this exercise, I'm going to use just the gold glitter just to try this out. A single toothpick and plain old Elmer's white glue. And I'm also using a piece of scrap thick cardstock to use kind of as my glue tray. But you can use a paper plate, whatever you want. And I've decided to try this on just the tips of our pine cones. I'll take a toothpick, dip it in the glue, so there's a good amount on there, not too much, not too little. And I'll dab it onto the bottom end of each petal of the pine cone. I keep seeing this was really inspired by those glitter dipped pine cones. I keep seeing them all over the place where Christmas decorations are, and they're so pretty. But I'm so afraid to buy them because I know I'll be finding glitter all over my house in like July. So I have restrained myself from buying them, but I thought they'd look super pretty on our page here. Now, once I have the glue in place on just this one pine cone, I'm going to apply the glitter. And you can use your fingers, like I did, just dived right in. Or you can use a spoon for more control. Or they even make glitter that's a bit more fine, meaning smaller than the ones that I bought. And it just shakes out of this little tube or the applicator that it comes in, kind of similar to like a spice jar. That's probably your best bet, as I quickly realized that the glitter that I purchased may be too large in size for what I'm trying it out on. Would have been a little bit better to get the fine stuff, since this is such a small area on our pine cones. But oh well, we're going for it. Now let's do the rest of the pine cones now. And I recommend doing the glue in a small area and applying that glitter to just that area before moving on so that your glue doesn't have a chance to set up before you're ready. And in full disclosure, I let this sit for about 5 minutes when I was done with all of these pine cones, just to let the glue dry a bit. But through the magic of editing, it's only been a moment to you guys, but again, I did let it sit for about 5 minutes. I also have a few pieces of scrap paper underneath my book to catch the glitter, because when we tilt it up, I want to be able to keep all that glitter from getting all over my desk, as well as being able to salvage it to use it again. All right, moment of truth. Cross your fingers for me, guys. Whoa. Whoa, okay. That's a lot of glitter still on these pine cones, way more than I meant to have, way more than I put glue down for. It's, again, probably a result of that large scale glitter versus the fine glitter problem that I mentioned earlier. But I have an idea, and I think we can deal with that in a moment. But in the meantime, let's get some of this extra glitter back in the can using our paper as a handy funnel. Glitter can be expensive, so we don't want to waste any of it. Okay, good enough. Back to our page. Now again, it looks like some of these large pieces are just kind of stuck in between the areas that I glued. They're not actually glued, they're just kind of stuck in there. So I have an idea. I'm gonna take a toothpick and just flick those extra bits out of those areas just to see if it makes any difference. Okay, that's definitely better, but buyer's remorse, should have definitely gotten that smaller, finer glitter. So just a little tip if you guys want to try this, go for that super small glitter, at least for the tiny areas that you want to use it in. But here it is. I think it came out really nice, and it definitely adds that little extra holiday sparkle that I was looking for. I'm going to keep the white glitter for another project, as I think it's perfect for, you guessed it, snow. That'll likely be my next project for you guys. So keep on the lookout for that. And I'm also thinking about doing a video coming up with my Faber-Castell pencils. I know I don't really use those very often. I'm not as good with them as my Prismacolors, so they kind of freak me out a little bit, but I know I need to practice with them because I know that a lot of you guys use them and have questions about them. So I've really got to suck it up and do a lot more videos with those pencils. All right, I'm gonna go de-glitterify my desk. It's gotta maybe finding it for weeks. Happy holidays, you guys. I will see you very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. It helps new folks find my channel. Also, please consider subscribing and visiting the rest of my channel to watch more coloring tutorials.